Hey everybody, welcome back to another week of our family nights here at Whitby Christian. It's real exciting for us to be a part of the church family and to spend some time with our church family today, and but another family this week. So we have Sarah Cumming, Sarah Akindode, Lincoln Luscombe, and Michaela Modest joining us today, and they are our summer interns that we have here at Whitby Christian. So they're working alongside of myself at the youth department here and taking care of all kinds of good stuff. So we're going to have a great time today. So I have a few questions for you guys just so the people can get to know you. But how was quarantine? I know that we're still kind of in it now. Phase 3 is kind of coming to an end, but how is everyone's quarantine so far?
I'll start. I got to relax and spend a lot more time with my family, which was fun, but also learned a lot about my family, which was interesting. And I would say I got to read the Bible a lot more, which was definitely awesome. And it's teaching me to get into better habits. So even though it was a rough time, I think I learned a lot and got a lot out of it.
Nice. That's great.
My quarantine was like a huge shift from what my life was like before it. I moved back home, moved in with my parents, and so far this has been the longest time I've lived in my parents' house for like 8 years almost. So it's been very different, a huge adjustment, but it's been kind of nice to just kind of spend time with family and relax and get down to sort of the basics almost, because it's easy to get caught up in busyness, and like my life was so busy when I was at school, so coming home and slowing down, probably slowed down a little too much at times, but slowing down is nice.
Yes, it really is, and huge blessing there. Sarah McKillen?
Yeah, I think I just learned how to rest better, and like also now, like coming, I guess we're not out of quarantine fully, but like being almost near hopefully the end, I've learned to say no to things I really don't want to do. Like I think I was just like I'll do it because I could, but now I'm like, no, I don't actually have to do it. And like it's so good for us to get rest and like actually rest. So I think that's one thing that I've definitely learned during quarantine.
Awesome.
School was more busy than actual school, which was kind of like a little bit, it was an adjustment because a lot of my classes were like early in the morning, then earlier than school. So it was kind of like I have to wake up at this time, but I did get to like have more of a schedule. And like I was definitely able to like spend more time with my mom, because normally my mom is out of the house before I leave and then she comes back later. So it was definitely like an adjustment, but it was also good. And there was like less distractions. So I was able to like study my Bible more, and I was able to do more Bible studies with like everyone in my house. So that was good.
That's awesome. Does anyone have summer plans? I know we're creeping up close to August. Does anyone have any summer plans that they want to share with us?
At the end of August, me and my family rented a cottage, and we're going up there for a week to get off the grid. So that'll be fun.
Off the grid, like no cell phones, no Wi-Fi?
Pretty much, yeah.
Wow, that's going to be exciting. Awesome. Anyone else? Any summer plans? Anything like that?
I think I'm just gonna pick like a random weekend to just go like drive, but not plan anywhere. Just keep driving until like, I don't know, like, I find an adventure.
Cool. That sounds really fun, actually.
Yeah.
That's great. Yeah. Sarah's, any summer plans for you guys at all?
Not currently, besides work, because I go home and then I sleep. So but my mom was talking about going to Niagara Falls, like maybe August, like Friday, Saturday. So we'll see how that goes.
Right on. Right on.
I don't really have any summer plans. I had huge summer plans before everything got canceled. But now it's just being here, working, hanging out with a couple friends that I have like in Durham region. That's mostly it.
And hanging out with us every day.
Yeah.
I know that's a highlight for you. So Here's our last question, then we'll get into our Bible story. What is something that you have missed during quarantine?
Well, I'll start. I miss going to like restaurants, but like go like sitting inside, like outside is nice and all, but like sitting inside, like just eating and like not having like a time limit either, just like relaxing with people, catching up. And I think this like I took for granted like going to the grocery store and going to the mall, like just to walk around. Like I took it for granted and I can't wait to get that back. So I think I missed those.
Yeah, that's good. That's good.
I've missed playing basketball and going to the gym because I used to always do that before quarantine. So I've missed just being with my friends, and I got to meet a lot of people doing that. So not being able to interact with them has been unfortunate. So yeah.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
I miss people, honestly. I'm so glad things have like started to open up more. And especially like working at church every day, it's so great to see people. Yeah, I'm an extrovert 100%. So I get like drained being at home alone.
I know I was like really sad at one point, and Julia's like, "Why are you sad?" And I said, "Honestly, I just haven't been with anybody, and I love you, but sometimes I need to see other people, you know."
Yeah.
And not in a bad way. Sarah, what did you miss?
Honestly, like just like leaving the house on Saturday with my friends, and like I don't have to see my mom until later. Like I love my mom and my sister and like my dad, but like I don't want to spend like my whole weekend with them. So it's kind of like I don't get to see my friends as much. So it's kind of like I just FaceTime them. So
Yeah, awesome. Well, again, we thank you guys for joining us today, and finally getting to hear your favorite Bible story, which we're going to get into right now. So if you're joining us, we're going to read from Daniel 3. I'm reading from the NIV, and we're going to talk about today some young boys who are caught up in a pretty sticky and hot situation. So here we go. Daniel 3, verse 1. King Nebuchadnezzar made an image of gold, 60 cubits high and 6 cubits wide, which is like huge, and set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. He then summoned the satraps, prefects, governors, advisors, treasurers, judges, magistrates, and all the other provincial officers to come up to the dedication of the image he had set up. So all these people and all the provincial officials assembled for the dedication of the image that King Nebuchadnezzar had stood up, and they stood before it. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "Nations of peoples and every language, this is what you are commanded to do. As soon as you hear the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of music, you must fall down and worship the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar has set up. Whoever does not fall down and worship will immediately be thrown into a blazing furnace." Therefore, as soon as they heard the sound of all these things, they fell down and worshipped the image of gold that King Nebuchadnezzar had set up. At this time, some astrologers came forward and denounced the Jews. They said to King Nebuchadnezzar, "May the king live forever. Your Majesty had issued a decree that everyone who hears the sound of the horn, flute, zither, lyre, harp, pipe, and all kinds of musical instruments must fall down and worship the image of gold. And whoever does not fall down and worship will be thrown into a blazing furnace. But there are some Jews who you have sent over the affairs of the province of Babylon, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who pay no attention to you, your Majesty. They neither serve your gods nor worship the image of gold you have set up." Furious with rage, Nebuchadnezzar summoned Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. So these men were brought before the king. And Nebuchadnezzar said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the image of gold that I have set up? Now, when you hear the sound of all those instruments, if you are ready to fall and worship the image I made, very good. But if you do not worship it, you will be thrown immediately into a burning burning furnace. Then what God will be able to rescue you from my hand?" Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to him, "King Nebuchadnezzar, we do not need to defend ourselves before you in this matter. If we are thrown into a blazing furnace, the God we serve is able to deliver us from it, and he will deliver us from your Majesty's hand. But even if he does not, we want you to know, your Majesty, that we will not serve your gods or worship the image of gold you have set up." Then Nebuchadnezzar was furious with Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and his attitude towards them changed. He ordered the furnace heated 7 times hotter than usual, and commanded some of the strongest soldiers in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and throw them into the blazing furnace. So these men, wearing their robes, trousers, turbans, and other clothes, were bound and thrown into the blazing furnace. The king's command was so urgent, and the furnace was so hot, that the flames of the fire killed the soldiers who took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these 3 men, firmly tied, fell into the blazing furnace. Then King Nebuchadnezzar leaped to his feet in amazement and asked his advisors, "Weren't there 3 men that we tied up and threw into the fire?" They replied, "Certainly, your majesty." He said, "Look, I see 4 men walking around in the fire, unbound and unharmed, and the 4th looks like a son of the gods." Nebuchadnezzar then approached the opening of the blaze furnace and shouted, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, servants of the Most High God, come out, come here." So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the fire, and the satraps, prefects, governors, and the royal advisors crowded around them. They saw that the fire had not harmed their bodies, nor was a hair of their heads singed. Their robes were not scorched, and there was no smell of fire on them. Then Nebuchadnezzar said, "Praise be to God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and rescued his servants. They trusted in him and defied the king's command, and were willing to give up their lives rather than worship or serve any god except their own. Therefore, I decree that the people of any nation or language who say anything against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego be cut into pieces, and their houses be turned into piles of rubber. For no other God can save in this way." Then the king promoted Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in the province of Babylon. What a story. And every time I read this, I was just thinking about VeggieTales and the giant chocolate bunny. So for some reason, like every time, I was just getting a good giggle picturing Larry and Bob and Junior Asparagus and their journey for chocolate bunnies. But here's my first question for you guys. Why is this story your favorite Bible story?
I think just because of like their unhindering faith, like just their faith alone. And I think it's just a good example as how like we as Christians can live. And like maybe they struggled, but like I don't really think they did. Like I think they were just like, no, this is the God we serve, and that's it. And I think that's just like how we should be striving to live. Like there really is like we can flee from that temptation just as they did, like of fear and all that. So yeah, just their faith.
That's awesome.
No fear of earthly pain, which
Yeah.
I think is so amazing.
Like, can I
Yeah,
saw your hand go up?
Yeah, I was just saying, I love how much courage they have, and no matter what, when everyone else probably bowed to the statue, they weren't afraid to stand up to everyone else, no matter what the cost, the ultimate cost of their life. But they were ready to lay it down for their God, and I just would hope that I would be able to have that same courage.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And like they must have honestly not even been scared, because they were like, whatever happens, happens. Like, this is the Jesus I serve, and I choose to do whatever I need to do to show other people. And they did show other people. Like the king ended up being like, this God that they serve is powerful. So they were like an example to others, which I think that as Christians we should be representing to the whole world.
Mm-hmm.
And it's amazing. It really shows how God uses us too. And they knew what was right, and they knew that they served God, and that's who they served. They're not going to bow down to any other gods. And that's what they knew in their heart. And then you see God use them and use that faithfulness and use that to change Nebuchadnezzar's heart to be like, whoa, oh my gosh, there's 4 guys in there. I thought we threw 3.
Yeah.
They're walking around. Did we tie them up? Wait, didn't like the people die that threw them in there? And it's so amazing that God is able to use us, you know?
Yeah. And those are all really, really strong answers. And I think for me too, it would just be the idea that, the idea of not fearing earthly pain, knowing that like God could save you. And if not, you're going to spend eternity with him. Like either way, it's beautiful. And like my brain just has a hard time getting that sometimes, but it's probably my favorite part of the story. So here's my next question for you. We don't have a lot in North America, these giant statues that people worship, traditionally anyways, just declared by the government that we are to worship. But what other things do you guys think or see in our culture that maybe people do worship that, we should look at and maybe kind of pull ourselves away from, or things that we recognize like that?
I think like one thing I definitely for like teenagers is social media, and like how we're just like looking at our followers and our likes and like who's going to follow us, and then we're posting just so that we can get more followers instead of trying to use our platform for like better causes. So I think I see that sometimes, and sometimes I have to think to myself like maybe I should like post a reminder and be like, you know what, on my story, like God loves you. And so I just been trying to work on that because I know that's a struggle for me sometimes. So
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
I think fame and celebrities, I think we give too much of our time um, to that instead of spending time with God, and it really often blocks our view. And also, it's one of those things that, as a Christian, you're often called to take a step back and to not lean into that worldly, whether it be that worldly view of success or that worldly view of love, or like all of that kind of stuff that's shown in our media and through the lives of celebrities.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah. Michaela,
I would say just our phones in general. Like so many people, their whole life is on their phone, and you only see them on their phone 24/7, and that's a big idol in a lot of people's lives. And I think if we could learn to limit ourselves and put boundaries on ourselves, our eyes would be open to a lot of things going on around us, and we wouldn't always be so focused on one thing all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think like an idol, I'm just starting to realize it more and more how relevant it is in everyone's life. But people, like I think we idolize like friends and family and like even church leaders a lot, where it's like God's saying no, like it's all about me. And I don't think we mean to do it purposefully, but I've just been thinking about it. And I'm like, how many times have I like maybe made somebody an idol? Maybe even myself, like I don't even know, but you know what I mean? And so I've just been trying to wrap my head around that, and just like also having a good heart check too, and making sure that like everything is coming out of a place of, okay, Holy Spirit, me, out to everyone else. And
Yeah.
and I think money too, like I think we idolize money a lot.
Yeah, and it's funny because we reread okay, we read passages like that, and it's like we look at idols as like these actual physical things we worship and like we bow down before. But you guys have all kind of hit something that like overconsumes our time. Things that we actually give our heart to is really what we worship, right? So when we come and give our heart to God, like that's our form of worship to Him, and we do that every day. And as we have our minds fixed on Him, that's us giving our hearts in worship all the time. But when we give our hearts, like you guys said, to celebrities, to social media, to our phones, or to our friends or money, that's really what we're just pouring out.
Yeah.
It was kind of funny though. Like I was chuckling as we were reading this. Sarah, you were talking about celebrities, and when it said the king ordered them to pick some of the strongest soldiers in the army, I just pictured like 5 Dwayne Johnsons, like literally just like picking them up by one hand bound, tossing them in, and then just like falling over because they just died, right? And so I had a good chuckle just picturing somebody like that in my head. But so can you guys tell us about a time where you had to maybe face a situation like this, or have you faced a situation like this where you kind of had to choose between God and the things that the world was kind of pushing on you?
Just a example, like, and for a high school student, like being invited to like parties and things that you might know, like it's not stated up front, but you might know some things that might go down are not godly at all, and things you don't want to get into. Just not going with the crowd, and maybe not having to sacrifice or not go to those, and maybe not being the most popular, or just going with the crowd and just standing up for what you believe in and what's right and what's holy and godly. That can be going against the wave and taking courage and faith in what's right, and that God has the right plan for you.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've honestly had to set boundaries with myself sometimes with my phone. Like for Lent, I gave up some things on my phone. And I think like it's so important to, like I said, sort of take a step back and realize how consuming this thing is. And for most of us, our phones are so consuming, and to set boundaries and be real with yourself, you know, be honest and say, this is how much time I spend on, maybe it's these certain apps or just your phone in general. And, you know, look at how much time you spend with the Lord and sort of say, I need to not spend as much time on my phone. I need to read the Bible more. I need to pray more, and set realistic goals and boundaries for yourself so that you are set up for success and setting yourself up to grow.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah. Sarah or Michaela, any thoughts here?
I was honestly thinking about this just in the sense that, like, I think my biggest challenge was when I was debating if I should go to Bible college or not, and I really felt like the Lord was saying, like, go to Bible college. But honestly, like, I don't understand it, but at this point I feel like everybody was like trying to talk me out of it. And I remember being like, no, like, I just feel like God is in this, like he's telling me to go. And I just remember like being super just like defeated, because I was like, is anybody for me in this? But I knew it's supposed to fit. And so I just remember going to Bible college and being like, yeah, like this is it. And my biggest blessing came out of just obedience. And I think I would have missed it if I had cowered to like what people were saying. And I think like there's something like about Jesus in this, like the fact that we like right before people are about to receive the miracle, like there's always somebody who's like, do you really want to go see Jesus? Are you sure? Like there's always that one person, but then when they're obedient, they just go see Jesus, they receive the miracle. And so I think it's like the same way here. Like when you're obedient and faithful, like you'll receive the miracle or whatever it is that you're looking for, right?
Yeah. Sarah, any experience with this?
Like kind of what like Sarah was saying about boundaries, but like mine was like with friends, because like when I was growing my faith more like in junior high and in high school, like there was friends that I couldn't hang out with anymore because like what we wanted were different things, and they wanted to do these things and I wanted to do, like, I rather go to church or go to youth or something. And like, you know, I tried to like bring them with me and like I take them to youth with me, but they didn't go for it. So it was kind of like I had to like not like drop them, but I had to kind of like distance myself from them so I can grow in my faith. And like the braveness that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had is like something that I wish I had when I was doing it when I was younger, because when I was younger it was harder for me because I was like, I went to school with these people, like these are my best friends at a point, and it's kind of like for God there's things you have to sacrifice. So that was one of the things.
Yeah, so for those of you guys who have heard me share a sermon before, I've kind of shared a bit of my testimony and how I had a big idol in my life for a long time, and that was basketball. And I didn't look at it as an idol when I was at that age and kind of in that journey with God, because I'm like, oh, you know, I pray sometimes, I read my Bible, and you know, I'm good. But it consumed my every part of who I was. Like my job was actually dedicated like around my basketball training, my diet, my phone, like all the things I was looking at, everything in between was all kind of geared towards this thing that I'm like, you know, it's not that big of a deal. But then it, like, once I realized how much of an idol it was and how like I was more or less worshiping all these players and the sport and all that stuff, it was actually really important for me then to have to decide in that moment, like, am I going to serve God or am I going to serve this idol? And so that was a decision where, you know, I didn't really choose the right thing right away, but I think I did good this time. So okay, last question, and some of you have already touched on this, but how can we live out our faith like this today, and how can we just kind of grow in it, in that place that Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego kind of were in?
I would just say, don't be afraid to go in a different path than those closest to you. And that if you feel like everyone else is doing something wrong or doing things you don't feel comfortable with or you don't think Jesus would do or are holy, don't be afraid to say no. And maybe you'll have to sacrifice things and you'll take courage and faith that God knows what to do and has the best in mind for you, and that everything's going to turn out okay.
Yeah, that's good.
I think it's a life focused on the Lord and like looking to God and not looking anywhere else and not letting your eyesight stray, right? Because I mean, with them, they weren't worried about anything because they weren't looking at anybody else, anything that they were doing. They were looking at God. And so I think if we like daily make sure that we're looking towards God in everything that we do, I think one day we could have the courage that they had.
Yeah.
So good.
Like adding on to what Claire said, like if we're consistent with our praying and reading our Bible and like getting our strength from God, like and just through the Bible, like I feel like we can get there. And like surrounding yourself with people who are going to encourage you in that type of way, and kind of find a place where you're like encouraged and you're gaining the strength every day to do that. So
Yeah.
Awesome. I would say that like it's just recognizing that like honoring God actually leads to reward, and it might not be like earthly, but it'll be heavenly, and it's something that like stewarding our faith and stewarding like the things that He's speaking to our hearts well, like even if it's just like don't worship other idols, like just stewarding that well will lead to such great things, and it will bless others in return. And just like recognizing, like I'm thinking about this story right now, and it never says like they didn't feel heat. Like they could have felt the heat, but like they didn't cower to it, you know what I mean? And like they just stood strong. And so yeah, I would just say that.
Yeah, and for me, I think Daniel, or sorry, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego would have seen this idol, and they had that place, right? Like that's a huge, like I think I looked at it's like 120 feet or something. I don't know, around that high. Either way, it's really big. And so it's like they would have seen it and they would have had the opportunity to actually look at it and to spend time and worship it. And there was that opportunity there. So I think for us, like practically, it looks like seeing the things in our lives that, the enemy has in culture or, society has established as like these idols. And are you going to look at it longer than you should? Or are you just going to look at it and be like, okay, I recognize that for what it is.
Yeah.
And you're not worth my time. You're not worth my energy. You're not worth any of that. And just kind of leave it there. So, yeah, we'll just end it on that. But thank you guys for joining us. We really appreciated having Young Family here today. And we really appreciate all your thoughts and just your wisdom that you shared with us as well. So thanks, guys.
Thanks for having us.
Yes.